Hey, fifth graders, we miss you so much. I'm so excited to have you here for social studies today. So today we're going to do a little bit of a review of the things that we have learned so far about civil rights. We're going to talk about Jim Crow laws and practices, Brown versus Board of Education, the Montgomery Bus Boycott, and the March on Washington. So Jim Crow laws came into being after the Civil War. It legally separated blacks and whites in the southern regions of the United States. They called this separate but equal. However, facilities for black individuals were inferior, meaning they were less than. As you can see here, it kind of shows you on the map that where the Jim Crow laws were required versus where they were forbidden. And as you can see, most of the southern regions, actually all of the southern regions, were the areas that Jim Crow laws were in effect. On to Brown versus Board of Education. So, schools were legally separated after the Civil War. In 1954, the Supreme Court heard the case of Brown versus Board of Education. One of the main lawyers in the case was Thurgood Marshall, and this is someone that you guys definitely need to remember. He argued that school segregation was not fair for African American children. And the Supreme Court ruled that separate is not equal. Next, the Montgomery Bus Boycott. Transportation in the South was segregated. African Americans were forced to crowd into the backs of buses to make room for whites and have the majority of seats. Rosa Parks was arrested one day for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger. Her arrest led to the Montgomery Bus Boycott. This was a boycott of city buses by African Americans. It ended over a year later when the buses were no longer segregated. In class, we talked about what boycott meant, and it meant to stop doing something in order for it to make a difference. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. played a big role in organizing the boycott and bringing national attention to the issue. That's like what we talked about with the television. And that he showed discrimination on public transportation in the South. So where is Montgomery, Alabama? Well, as you know, we are right here in Georgia. We see Florida down here. Georgia's right here. Well, right over here is Montgomery, Alabama, and this is where all of that took place. The March on Washington. The March on Washington was organized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders to bring attention to the continued segregation and inequalities experienced by African Americans. This is where Dr. King delivered his I Have a Dream speech, something that we've heard of multiple times. It's a great speech. More than 250,000 people attended. Think about how huge that is. It led to Dr. King meeting with President Kennedy about civil rights for African Americans and eventually the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now it's time for a quiz. Jim Crow laws took place in what regions of the United States? Number 2. What was the court case that ended segregation in schools? Number 3. Blank was the lawyer that argued segregation was not fair for African American children. Number 4. Blank was arrested one day for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger. Number 5. Blank was organized by civil rights leaders to bring attention to the continued segregation and inequalities experienced by African Americans. Number 6. Blank was a boycott of city buses by African Americans. And number 7. Which state and city is located on this map? And as you can see, there's a little red dot down there. So, what I want you to do now is write down numbers 1 through 7 on a piece of paper. Pause this video and try to figure out which is the correct answer. Then press play to see the correct answers. So let's check your answers. Jim Crow laws took place in the southern regions of the United States. What was the court case that ended segregation in schools? Brown versus Board of Education. Thurgood Marshall was the lawyer that argued segregation was not fair for African American children. Rosa Parks was arrested one day for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger. The March on Washington was organized by civil rights leaders to bring attention to the continued segregation and inequalities experienced by African Americans. The Montgomery Bus Boycott was a boycott of city buses and African Americans. Which state and city is located on this map? It's Montgomery, Alabama. Thanks for watching today, guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.